Hello everyone and welcome to Capes, Cowls Masks, the show where we uncover the world of soups and science fiction. I'm your host, Jake Hart. I'm a podcaster, a sound designer and a writer for the Fresh Take Hub. And as always, I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom Gapper, a podcaster, aspiring writer, and your resident comic book shogun. And I only put those three things there because it flows better when you put three things. You know, it's just got it rolls off the tongue quite nicely. Jake did three things.
I agree. And I like the aspiring writer. Nice touch there.
Yeah, because I'm not actually a writer yet, but I'm hoping to get there. So
all in due time, my friend.
I'll write a thing one day.
And also with us,
David Oscar. I'm a multimedia journalist, a podcaster, and editor over on Fresh Take Hub. And as a writer, I can appreciate the list of three things because sometimes, again, especially going through things like press releases, some people are just like, "This includes da 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 da." I'm like, "Whoa, that's did you not look at the rules, man? Three, you can't have this much." Or when it's two, and you're like, "Just add another."
Yeah, see, that was my issue. I had two things, and then I was like, but that doesn't sound right. So, and here we are. Thrilling conversation.
Here we are indeed. What a great way to start the show.
Yeah. It's why we're better than the Sith. It's the rule of three, not the rule of two.
Yeah, always breaking those rules. You know what else is three? It's three news stories that we got to talk about today. But before we get into that, and the main topic, which for not a first time, but a rare occasion on Capes, Cowls Masks, we're going to be talking Star Wars, getting into the trailer of the Book of Boba Fett. But before we get any of that, Dave, please speak freely. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I was saying to Tom before we recorded, I just wish there was more time in the week, or there was an 8th day or something, just because time is escaping me at the moment. It's just hard to get everything done. So as it gets to December, things do get a lot more busy, especially for myself. Several birthdays come up, including my own. I'll be turning very old this year. I'm now enjoying the last few weeks of my 20s. Sad face. But yeah, apart from that, it's have thankfully been able to squeeze in some, films and television shows recently. So as Jake will know, I went to see Dune again in IMAX after seeing a preview screening. I really enjoyed that. Hopefully can kickstart a lot of films I need to catch up on in the cinema. And also I have now finished What If from Marvel, which, is nicely timed, I suppose, before Eternals, which I have got booked for Friday. So looking forward to that. But What If, obviously gutted I couldn't join you guys for that review episode. But because I definitely would have had some thoughts, and I know I've communicated some of them to Jake in the past. And I just kind of feel the same maybe as I did at the beginning of the series as I did at the end. And that's kind of why it took me so long to get through. And it's just that I was like, meh. I really wasn't impressed by this series, I've got to be honest. It impressed me in some elements. I will give it that. I thought there was some great animation, some fun story beats. But I just felt it was just kind of just fan service a lot of the time and just nothing really engaging. I felt that there was so many things I've seen before. There wasn't anything really to captivate me because even the premise of What If is just, well, none of this is real, none of it matters. So I was just like, there's nothing really for me to get invested in. There was no new characters. And especially when you don't have the existing characters appear as original characters because they're either voiced by the same person from the live action films, and Jake will know again from my thoughts on Invincible, there's sometimes the issues I get with live action actors sometimes crossing over into animation, which I don't think always works. But the fact that then when they did have people who weren't the actors, they were just doing an impression of that person. So obviously, love Jeffrey Wright and everything like that. But yeah, the finale was fun. But again, it was just fun. I just didn't really think that there was anything substantial there from that series. So maybe interested in a future series, but for me, it's not like the MCU shows. It's not that I need to sit down and focus entirely on what's happening. I feel you can easily put it on in the background, which is a bit unfortunate, but yeah, that's what I thought of What If.
Yeah. Well, as Tom mentioned on Twitter, when you're a studio that's got 20 plus projects now, you're bound to have a fumble at some point. And, you know, I don't want to get too much into it. You can hear our thoughts on the spoiler review that me and Tom did with Rob Ailing. But yeah, I think we echo a lot of your thoughts, Dave. I loved a lot of it. Well, I loved like half of it, and the other half not so much. So it's very in the middle for me. Yeah,
I'd also just add that, like, and again, I don't think it's so much like a fumble. I don't think it's like, oh, like you said, I think that it's a good element to mention. But I think that is what trips them up, is that once a company does so well at so many things, that then when something is just mediocre, okay, it then does seem like a fumble. Whereas actually, if it was another company, you'd be like, oh, this is quite enjoyable. But it's just because they've already set the bar quite high. So, and again, it's more just that, like, oh, they just can't do amazing animated stories as they can with certain live action and movie projects, etc.
Yeah, definitely. Tom, how about yourself, man? I know you also finally went to go see Dune.
I did, and as I said on Twitter, I get it now. I was hyped before I understood the hype, but then I watched the film and oh my God, I have so many thoughts on that film, and I absolutely loved it, and I need to see it again and again and again, and I need part 2 right now, and I'm going to start reading the books. Jake has done this to me. I blame Jake for this. But yeah, absolutely amazing film. If you haven't been able to see it yet for whatever reason, please go do so whilst it's in the cinema, because that is what it was made for. I've also been enjoying the new Guardians of the Galaxy game, which I know when we talked about it, the announcement on the show, I was a little bit pessimistic about that, especially after the debacle that was the Avengers game. Holy fuck, have my expectations been blown. It is an incredible game. And like, it is, I remember one person saying that it scratched that Mass Effect itch, which is something I've been having, like waiting for like the new games to be announced properly. And it's just, this game is now the king of having like party banter in the game. It's absolutely incredible. The characters are amazing. There's loads of little nods, which me as a comic book fan is just so happy to see. Yeah, I urge you to pick it up if you know you're into that sort of thing. I know you guys aren't. It saddens me, but yeah. So that's been my week. Just video games and Dune.
Well, I'm glad that's a success for you, Tom, because I have seen a lot of other reviews, a lot of other outlets praising the game. So that it's good to see, especially after you said the lukewarm reception, you could say, regarding the Avengers game.
That would be putting it very politely.
Yes, yes. Like you as well, I went to go see Dune for a 4th time in the cinemas. 3rd time being in IMAX. That was the viewing I had with Dave. My God, what cinema. I just thinking of Martin Scorsese right now. Cinema with his hands like that. And I'm also reading, as I showed Tom earlier, this Dreamer of Dune, which is the biography of Frank Herbert, who wrote the original books. And it's interesting because when you love a writer's work or anything, or a filmmaker or whoever, we sometimes put them on pedestals, you know what I mean? And sometimes, or not worship them, but you know what I mean? So, sort of holier than thou sort of thing. But then when you actually go into their day-to-day life and realize what they were like with people who knew them, and you're like, oh, wow, they're just people and they've got their own problems as well. So in a way, it's kind of, like a symbiotic circle, you could say, because that's effectively what Frank Herbert was writing about, is don't blindly follow your leaders. So, yeah, it's a really interesting book. And if anyone has read the books and wants to learn more about the author, then I highly recommend. So that's pretty much what it's been. Very Dune-filled this last couple of weeks for me. And it's a lot of spice going around. I'm addicted.
He's got the Funko Pop and everything.
I know. I got them both now. Oh, God. This is only the beginning, I can tell you.
Oh. I get it now.
You get it. Right, so let's get into the news then, because we got quite a few things to cover.
Tear up page 1, run that photo instead. Headline: Spider-Man, hero or menace? Exclusive Daily Bugle photo.
First up, we have the new Morbius trailer, which reminds us of the other anti-hero in Sony's Marvel universe. So yeah, do we all remember Morbius? Because it's been quite a while since that film was meant to come out, and when we've had trailers, etc. The first trailer for the vampire anti-hero movie came out quite a long time ago, and now we finally get more footage showing us what to expect from the new chapter in Sony's Spider-Man universe. The film stars Jared Leto as the titular Dr. Michael Morbius, a Nobel Prize-winning scientist born with a blood condition who spends his life obsessed with curing his ailment, but ends up turning himself into a so-called living vampire while trying to find a cure. The film also stars Matt Smith, Adria Arjona, Jared Harris, Al Madrigal, Tyrese Gibson, and Michael Keaton, who will be reprising his role as the villain Vulture. So, yeah, the trailer literally came out today and was more of a kind of story trailer, I guess. This was like titled the official trailer. Not quite sure what all the other trailers that we had up until now were, but yeah, this was one of those in which it kept getting delayed, but nobody really cared. Like with other films that were getting delayed before, we had seen sort of a teaser, then another trailer is meant to come out, before Venom, but then weirdly got delayed till after it, even though it was originally supposed to come out before it. And yeah, now we're kind of getting this more story-focused trailer in which I guess we're kind of seeing more of the money shots, more of like the full visuals, as they've obviously had a lot of time to work on this film. So, Tom, I can't remember when we did last speak about Morbius, but remind us of your thoughts of the project up until now and what you think after this trailer.
Thoughts on the project? It's really difficult to summon up thoughts on a project that you care so little about. But I'll try my best. So yeah, when we initially were talking about Morbius, I think I was basically saying that I wasn't all that hyped for it. I don't think the trailer really popped for me. There was some cool elements in there, but it just wasn't grabbing me. And then, as you said, we just had no new trailers until now. Barely a mention of the film, really, until now. And I have to say, seeing the second trailer, I'm still very much on the fence. What I will say is when I went to see Venom, and they played the first trailer for Morbius there. And I will say, seeing that trailer on the big screen, I was actually feeling kind of hyped for the film. And I was like, okay. And then after seeing Venom, and if you've seen Venom, you kind of know what happened there. I am interested in the possibilities now of like where the Spider-Verse is going. But yeah, it's hard really to get excited about this film. I'm not a huge fan of Jared Leto, if I'm honest with you. As a person, as an actor, as a musician, I'm just not really that much of a fan. I don't think he's like a bad actor or a bad musician. He just doesn't gel well with me. But what I will say, seeing that Jared Harris is in this film, I will go and see it just for him, because I love Jared Harris. I absolutely adore him. If you haven't been watching Foundation, watch Foundation, because it's really, really good. And yeah, I'm excited to see Michael Keaton, I guess, as the Vulture, because, as I said, I just want to see... I mean, I guess we'll have our answers after No Way Home, but I do want to see where the Spider-Verse is going, and I do think that this film is going to be important for setting a lot of that up. But yeah, just overall, it's a film that I will go and see, but I don't really have high hopes for it. And yeah, that's all I can really say about it, to be honest.
No, completely fair. Jake, what do you think?
Well, for starters, when you were saying this is more of a story trailer, I was like, oh, yes, it is, because they've given us the whole fucking story in this trailer. Like, first of all, I saw, like, when I first clicked on the YouTube thing, I was like, wait, 3 minutes and 15 seconds. What is this? And then, like, as I was watching this, I'm like, this is effectively the whole film, because they've set up his condition, how he gets his powers, it starts explaining his powers, introduce the story that he's meant to be a hero or a villain. You're not quite too sure about that. And you see this sort of trajectory of him killing people and people are after him, and then he's gonna turn into the living vampire right at the end of the film. I've plotted out the whole movie from this trailer. I feel as if I don't even need to see this film now. I just think this is a really bad move from the marketing. It's basically, for me anyway, giving the whole film away. I don't really like apart from spoilers right now. If you haven't seen Venom Let There Be Carnage, skip like 30 seconds in the podcast. But at the end of Venom Let There Be Carnage, when we see that he's in the Spider-Verse with Tom Holland now, that's the only thing in this film that's going to surprise me now if they do that, because I feel as if I've seen the whole film. And I watched the first trailer just to sort of compare, and I was like, no, I think I prefer the first trailer. The mood was better, the tone was better, the use of music was better. I was like, this seems like a better constructed trailer. This one just seemed too much like, oh, look at us, look at what we can do, like, look at Jared Leto and like sort of thing. Like, and yeah, like Tom, I'm half with Jared Leto. Like, I'm not too huge fan of his music, his acting. Some films I really like. I think he's fantastic in. Others, not so much. Like, he makes some strange decisions sometimes. So yeah, I don't know what to expect of this film, really. I'm going to go see it, obviously, but I just don't know where I land with this film. I will say this, though. I'm more excited for it than any of the Venom films. Like, at least in terms of tone and what they're trying to do, it's a bit more my jam than what the Venom films are. But still, not overly optimistic for this film.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, I'm just still, just entirely, I don't want to say displeased by the entire Sony Spider-Verse, because I've always been displeased with it ever since, The Amazing Spider-Man, and this just always seems so desperate. Like, I hated I'm sorry, people, but, I really hated the Andrew Garfield films, and, I'll get a smile for seeing him in Far From Home, but there's not going to be any kind of like emotional connection for me. I don't even think he's personally a good Peter Parker, which I know a lot of people think that he was. I'll just be like, yeah, there's another Spider-Man here, that's fun. But even they kind of, the end of Notorious Amazing Spider-Man 2, we got that character walking through, and you can see Doc Ock's arms, and you could see the glider and references to all these other villains, and it just seems that they've always just kind of been like, yeah, and it's, quickly throw everything in the kitchen sink in there. So when we're talking about these references and stuff like that, it just gives me like bad flashbacks to that, and I guess it doesn't help this film and Venom kind of share a lot of the same look as the Amazing Spider-Man films in a lot of ways. So even though a lot of people can say that the MCU can often be ugly, and it can be, but at least they have a different look and aesthetic. And these films kind of just remind me of that period we had in like the early 2000s, where again, off the success of X-Men and Spider-Man, we were getting, Incredible Hulk and Catwoman and Daredevil, and we were getting these like subpar adaptations of characters and famous storylines, etc. And they just all looked the same. They all followed the same sort of narrative. They were all very like loosely based on the characters. And I think that this just seems very much in that vein. And I think kind of like with things like the Jumanji films or Fast and the Furious, I think there is an audience out there for that. We've seen it with Venom, though Let It Be Carnage hasn't really stuck around after the initial hype, even though we were all like, oh no, why is this doing better than Shang-Chi? But it's not exactly there doing like record numbers worldwide. It's just stayed the same as every other pandemic movie. Morbius definitely isn't going to be that film that breaks the like 500 million sort of mark or anything like that. But I definitely think that kind of audience that, rush to go see Venom 2 would, maybe eat this up as well. Whether they'll go rush to see it, I don't know. But it seems that they could, like the Fast and Furious films, keep releasing these type of films, and there's an audience and an appetite from certain types of people who would just eat all of that up. You know, we were talking the other day, Jake, on the Filmmakers special. Our guest, you know, Sophie was talking about her boyfriend, that was like, oh, I'm really excited to see this film. So there's, you know, there are people who enjoy these films, and fair enough for them. Again, I don't watch this trailer and go like there's anything inherently bad about it. I just don't see anything unique or interesting. It's still the same as like the teaser for me. It looks very much like just Doctor Strange, darker. You know, it's very much structured in that way. Just the whole like, oh, I'm ill, I need to find this like cure. It's crazy that is just appearing a few years after Doctor Strange come out. And even if it was like DC or something, you could understand. But the fact that this is like Marvel still, even though it is an MCU, you would still think that they're like
Marvel adjunct.
Yeah, we're still associated with them, so we shouldn't just rip off one of their films. But it's fine. Like Doctor Strange is appearing in one of our films, so yeah. Again, it's kind of like Venom. It just has so much of like a 90s, early 2000s vibe of like, who are you? What have you become? And it just, like you were saying, Jake, you can tell the storyline straight away. There's so many elements that seem similar to Venom as well. And you've got like these police characters and people chasing after him and evil villains in labs and all of this kind of stuff. None of it seems original. But unlike Venom, I wasn't there like, this looks horrendous, or I don't like it, it looks stupid. Or I'm not on board with any of the casting. I don't have any major problems with Jared Leto. I think he's been very badly utilized since his Oscar win. Like Tom, I can understand. I think he's a bit of a Tom Cruise for me, in which I can appreciate his work and his acting ability, but I kind of just assume that he seems like a bit of a douchebag in real life. So and you know, you hear those stories about like when he was on set as Joker, and like those kind of stuff is a bit weird, and obviously, you know, his personal life seems a bit shady as well. But I did think he did a fantastic job in Dallas Buyers Club, and ever since then, there's been so many projects that you were like, oh, you know, will this be the great follow-up project to that? And you know, he had, you know, Blade Runner 2049, but he didn't really have much of a chance to sort of shine during that. There's always been those rumors of like Tron 3, which potentially he could suit. But again, it just seems like, oh, he just tends to take the like failed franchises, you know, like taking the scraps off the floor. And it makes me sad for somebody like Aaron Taylor-Johnson, in which they got him as Kraven. And I'm like, no, don't go there, Aaron. Like, please, you're better than this. You've been in the MCU. You know, it's like they are just taking like the leftovers of Marvel and DC, etc. And I wouldn't go down that path if I was any of those actors. And yeah, I just don't like this approach of doing like villain origin solo stories. I will say though, in the vein of like Blade and stuff, unlike Venom as well, I can understand doing a film about Morbius more than I can Venom. Like watching this trailer, it's a bit more like, okay, I can understand a bit more than when it was announced or when we saw the teaser of why he deserves his own film, because again, he was always a weird character to have as a Spider-Man villain. So I can understand in the sense of like how Blade can be very separate to the overall Marvel universe and be its own thing. I can see Morbius working somewhat in that way. But then they were so like on the nose of being like, who are you? He's like, I'm Venom. And I was just like, oh man, like that just ruined it for me. And again, like he didn't perform that even well. I think Jared Leto was even cringing on set when he probably had to do that. So yeah, you know, my opinions is that I'm getting major Amazing Spider-Man vibes from the overall Spider-Verse. I still don't think that they should meld MCU, and I still don't think that I would be surprised if Kevin Feige is willing for them to fully like integrate. I would think that he would want to put up that barrier, and I don't think that they should integrate them. And yeah, I think
you might be disappointed there, Dave.
Well, there's, you know, again, we're dealing with multiverses. Yeah. There's still the chance that we're dealing with, some alternate reality or something.
Regardless, though, there's still even if it's multiverses, they're still somewhat going to be playing with each other.
Either way, I think it taints the MCU if they play too much with that toy box on both ends. So I think they should tread carefully when they're dealing with all of this stuff, especially when it is like, oh, Oscorp, you see the Oscorp building. So does that mean that a Sony Marvel film could set up Norman Osborn, which then means that a Marvel film can't introduce that character or can't use their own version of Norman Osborn? It leads to a lot of problems, especially if those, the Sony films are not well received, or things don't work out, or people aren't a big fan of them, blah, 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 blah. So it's messy. But as far as this film is concerned, as far as that trailer was concerned, yeah, I agree with you, Jake. It seemed like we saw a lot of the story. I was more on board for it. I can imagine it'll be like an okay time, but like Venom, etc., I just don't think it'll be anything original. I think you'll just come out of it and be like, yeah, that was a comic book film, but it just doesn't seem like anything really wholly original. Very generic, and it's almost as if at this rate they can just snap their fingers and make one of these films now, which I think is unfortunate for comic book movies, that they can just rustle one up like this. They can just go, yep, here we go. So, yeah, kind of worrying for the future of comic book movies in that way, and whether Sony will continue to just be the oddball that's just there doing the sort of subpar universe building compared to everyone else.
Tom, anything else to say about Morbius?
No.
Fair enough. Well, let's now get into our next story then, and that is Brendon Fraser is playing the villain in the Batgirl movie, because of course he should be. So Brendon Fraser is set to join the cast of the live-action Batgirl movie as the villain, and according to Deadline, Fraser is reportedly playing the supervillain Firefly, who is a man obsessed with setting things on fire, naturally. A little synopsis on the character Firefly. So his name is Garfield Lins, and Firefly started as a petty criminal after his career as a movie pyrotechnic expert suddenly ended. Of course, with that particular set of skills, Lins decided to bring his expertise to the criminal underworld and started carrying out arson attacks throughout Gotham. Tom, I'm going to go to you first on this. Are you a fan of Brendon Fraser? Are you excited for this casting? And are you a fan of the character Firefly?
Of course I'm a fan of Brendon Fraser. I have a soul. I have a heart. He is a glorious man. I've loved him since George of the Jungle. Loved him in Scrubs. I've loved him in Doom Patrol. I will continue loving him until the end of his days. Or mine, whichever comes first. I did not see this coming. I'll be honest. I was hearing like reports and like whispers, but when it was actually announced, I was like, okay. I wasn't expecting them to go for Firefly in the Batgirl movie, but you know what? I can dig it. Firefly has shown up in a fair few comics that I've read, and I have always been interested in the character. The character's always usually an interesting one to have around. Plus, all the fire. It's cool. It's a cool shtick, it's a cool shtick. Let's be fair. So yeah, I'm very, very happy to see Brendon Fraser appearing in a Batgirl movie, big movie. Even if it isn't this one is one of the HBO exclusives though, isn't it? God damn it! But still, I'm very happy for him and just generally quite excited. I'm quite excited by this movie anyway, especially after DC Fandom. It definitely got my hype up, and so just everything I hear about this film is making me more hyped for it, and Brendon Fraser is just the cherry on top of the cake. So when's this coming out again?
No date yet. No date
yet. God damn it, give us a date, because I kind of want this movie now.
So Dave, what did you think of this news then?
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting. I suppose a lot of people have been waiting for a casting announcement like this because there's been so much love for Brendon Fraser recently, where he's
the Fraser-sance.
Yeah, he's talked about where he's been, a lot of the troubles he's had and stuff throughout the last few years, and he is kind of like a strange actor in that he's, if you look at his career, he didn't really have much of a career before the 90s. and he wasn't one of those actors who was appearing like in a lot of stuff, but he was in a lot of like big projects or projects that were just close to people's hearts in terms of nostalgia, like Tom said there about George of the Jungle, etc. So yeah, he's definitely somebody who's like stuck with people, and he does seem like a genuinely nice guy. So I'm glad for him in that sense. I am a bit concerned because he said that he, left acting for so long because he kind of messed his body up when he was doing a lot of like stunts and stuff for like a lot of these films, like with the Mummy films. He kind of really messed up his back and everything. And I was like, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with you doing superhero and action stuff then. Are you going to be okay? Like, please don't go doing anything that will injure yourself. But again, I can see why they've cast him as it. Kind of made sense to me from, my vague knowledge of the character. I think mainly I knew Firefly from the Batman cartoon series, in which like they would sometimes have him like team up with like Dr. Freeze, and it'd be like, fire and ice and all this kind of stuff. So I've kind of been waiting, I suppose, for them to use that character. I'm not surprised that they put him in as a villain, because Batman has taken all the other villains at this rate. There's not really, much left to use.
I mean, Firefly is, unfortunate to say, but he is like a B or even a C-list Batman villain.
Exactly. And would we even say that Batgirl has like her own villain? We'll have to watch
Not really. I mean,
we'll have to watch the CW.
Yeah, I mean, because she's obviously based in Gotham most of the time, she naturally come across as Batman's villains.
Yeah.
Time,
so I can see why they've done it in that sense as well, that they're like, oh, well, let's give her a villain or character that can sort of seem unique to her, which isn't like already going to give people vibes of previous incarnations, etc. Yeah, I just hope that Brendon Fraser isn't going to be doing his own stunts. And I think the age as well, I've kind of always maybe imagined him as more of a younger character. And if, Batgirl is obviously quite young, so I'm interested whether they're going to go at this with a kind of like Vulture vibe, like Michael Keaton in Spider-Man films, in which he's going to be like this sort of like more older, grizzled, kind of like grumpy guy, or whether they will play up that he's more of a, young guy in like an older person's body, that he's maybe like an outcast, etc., and a bit of like a, crazy person, like somebody like Joker, etc. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I can see why they've done it, because of his popularity. Again, too bad it's not on the big screen. So yeah, I look forward to seeing it. I think he will do a good job. I think that, I do still sometimes have like bad vibes from The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. I hated that film when it first came out.
We don't need to talk about that. Just let it go.
It happened, Tom.
Just breathe.
It happened.
Breathe.
It's one of those nostalgia things in which people conveniently forget that film.
I try to.
So, yeah, I do sometimes get bad flashbacks to that, but I'm not going to blame it on Brendon Fraser. So, yeah, I think he'll do a good job as a villain. It'd be something different for us to see, because he was so used to being the leading man in a lot of those films. And I think it definitely does, again, add more to the Batgirl film to level it up, so that hopefully eventually they'll be like, yeah, let's put this on the big screen.
Yeah, I'm with both you guys. I think this is a really interesting casting. One I didn't see coming, but it also kind of makes sense at the same time, especially when it's still not confirmed, but Deadline are pretty, you can rely on them. But saying that he's going to be Firefly, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. And the way I picture how he's going to be utilized in this film is very maybe so similar how Roman Sionis was used in Birds of Prey. Like, I think he's going to be more of a, like you said, Dave, more of a grizzled older guy. Like, he's like, oh, I've been good doing this for quite a long time, sort of thing. And it's maybe more, he's taking a back seat, sort of say, more of like a gangster, you could say, in a way. But at the same time, he could lose his shit and start burning stuff all the time. So, but naturally, stuntmen, CGI, you can work all of that. And I can imagine Fraser won't have to do as many stunts as he used to do, because, with the stunt teams now, they could do wonders. So he doesn't need to do any of that. And in fact, like, having watched the making of Black Widow on Disney Plus, the assembled 1 hour documentary, when they were talking about stunt work, they always ask the actors first, like, how many of the stunts do you want to do? And they say, if you don't want to do any, that's absolutely fine. So I think we don't have to worry on that front. I think he will be given the option to do as many stunts as he wants to do, if none at all. But at the same time, like you said, Dave, I think this levels this up. It's really interesting. I'm really more excited to see this film now, but I just want more. I want a date. I want to know when this film's coming. And yes, again,
footage as well would be
yes.
Nice.
Well, they need to start shooting. So
can they at least like in maybe a few months? I'll give them a few months, but just give us a photo of Batgirl in full costume. Just something.
We'll get that.
Just a little something.
We'll
just little.
Well, we're definitely going to get that at some point. Yeah, definitely.
They said we're getting the red hair.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to see that red hair. And they're going for the cowl as well, not the domino mask. So yeah, can't wait to see that. Can't wait to see this film. It's about time she got her due on the screen, even though it's not going to be the big one. Right, Tom, what we got next then?
Oh, we've got some exciting news. At least it's very exciting for me. So there's a new Marvel game coming, and it's from an absolute titan in the gaming industry, Amy Hennig, who is famous for doing the Uncharted games, and veteran gamers will also recognize her from being the writer, director, producer of the Legacy of Kain series, one of the finest gaming series of all time. So Skydance Media has announced that their gaming division, headed by Amy Hennig, will be working on a narrative-driven blockbuster action-adventure game set in the Marvel Universe. Announced in a statement on Skydance Media's website, Skydance New Media and Marvel Games have partnered to create a new AAA Marvel video game project. This project will have a completely original story and take on the Marvel Universe. Hennig, who serves as president of Skydance New Media, said in a statement, "I can't imagine a better partner than Marvel for our first game. The Marvel Universe epitomizes all the action, mystery, and thrills of the pulp adventure genre that I adore and lends itself perfectly to an interactive experience. It's an honor to be able to tell an original story with all that humanity, complexity, and humor that makes Marvel characters so enduring, and to enable our players to embody these heroes that they love." Now, as I said, she's a titan in the gaming industry. The Uncharted games, huge success. The Legacy of Kain games, also huge success. She's done many other things as well. Now, I know you guys aren't, as big gamers as me, nowhere near as big a gamer as me, but are you excited by this news and the potential that it could bring? Because, as I said, she knows her stuff.
I wouldn't say I'm excited. I'd say I'm intrigued by it. The reason I'm not excited is because they haven't really given us much to go on yet in terms of setting or characters or anything like that. So that's why I can't really get too excited about, because they might go, "Hey, we're going to do MODOK." And I'll be like, "Oh, all right then." Like, so, I need a bit more to get excited about. But I'm intrigued by the premise and the people involved in this. Like, I haven't played the Uncharted games, but I have played Jedi Fallen Order. And a lot of gamers have said that Fallen Order is very similar to Uncharted in the sense of the mechanics of the game, jumping up, exploring, that Indiana Jones sort of Tomb Raider style of game, like looking for artifacts and that sort of stuff. And to have a sort of game like that in the Marvel universe, that could be kind of cool. And having thought about it, when you mentioned, Tom, on our group chat, that the rumor that it could be Daredevil, I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? That would actually work really well, I think, because Daredevil, apart from Spider-Man, is one that's always jumping up around the rooftops of New York City, looking for clues. He is in a way part detective at sometimes. So yeah, I think it would work quite well for a Daredevil game. But apart from that, there's not much else to go on. But I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you are right. There is what I will say about the Daredevil rumors is it is at this point just speculation. But what I will say is, in my experience, gamers are incredible at just like finding this information. Like more so, like you think movie leaks are bad. Gamers they're scary, man. They are scary, the things they can find out. So when I hear something like this, that it could be Daredevil, if this was like, a film thing, I'd be taking it with a pinch of salt that we're getting a Daredevil film. But with this, I am thinking, this could definitely be a direction they're going in. Obviously, it could be somewhere completely different. But Dave, what do you think? What characters actually would you like to see possibly from this new game?
Yeah, I have to think on that one. On the aspect of just like, being excited about video games and all that kind of stuff, as you said, me and Jake are not as big a gamers as yourself, and I wouldn't consider myself a gamer, but obviously I think that most people who grew up, or born in the 90s, etc., can consider themselves like from that generation of growing up with, PlayStation and GameCube and all of that kind of stuff. So I think I've always loved what video games can bring to pop culture. There's not this kind of like rivalry or anything of like, like you often get with books and stuff like that. Like, oh, the books are better than the films and etc. There's not many, well, okay, video games, yeah, people usually are like the video games are better than their adaptations. But what I'm saying is you don't usually get people like saying like, oh, I don't like, movies. I prefer to like, play my stories and everything like that. They usually like correlate and overlap and all that kind of stuff. So the success of the video game industry is a lot of the time like a good thing for just pop culture as a whole. It shows the people into these kind of like long form stories. They're into these like kind of like science fiction, fantasy stories, but also original storytelling. Like video games are like, I'm always just fascinated by like, trailers and seeing these characters and stuff, because it gives creative people like a chance to sort of create new worlds and new ways of telling stories and getting people to experience things. So like Jake, when I do get a video game that makes me go, ooh, I want to pick that up, then it must be a significant one, because again, I just don't have the time to like pick up, your average like original video game. But if it's something like Fallen Order, then there's the investment of Star Wars there for me, and I'm like, oh yay, I get to explore, that world. And I think the Star Wars has always lended itself really well to video games, and Marvel has never sort of captivated that. I think, I did play quite a bit of like Batman, the Arkham games. Not all of them, not all the way through, to be honest, but what I did play, I was impressed by. And so I think DC is also like done very good in the video game world. So again, that's where Marvel's kind of been behind. So when I hear this, then I keep thinking like, oh, is this their chance to kind of finally get into that world? Because I feel that they want to do that. They keep trying. As Jake said, it was kind of like a lukewarm reception with the Avengers game, and that one to me didn't seem like anything that like made me want to go like run and pick up that game. But if it was something that was more like a kind of Fallen Order, Uncharted, Tomb Raider of like exploring stuff, something a bit, an original story of some form.
Well, even the Spider-Man games, Dave, they were very successful. The recent ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's another good example of, like in the past, even like the Spider-Man games that were based off like the movies, like the Tobey Maguire ones, they did, a lot of people have a lot of fond memories of those, but they were still like doing like original parts of the games. It wasn't just a direct adaptation of those movies. So I think, there's loads of possibilities in games. So yeah, I don't know if they were going to do one. If I was going to choose a character, who would I choose? I don't know. Maybe something, well, I think an interesting story, and this might just be, again, because I saw that What If episode, but this is potentially like why it's like, oh, that's, it's a cool villain and it's a cool setting, but maybe this would be where it would be like the coolest, is if you had something to do with Ultron. I think the aspect of when you've got all those robots and stuff, and that does make for some good action in the film and in the cartoon series, but that could make for some really cool stuff in a video game, because a video game you often have to have a lot of enemies that you can easily just take out, etc. So robots are like perfect for that. And
so,
the fact,
so as the villain, you mean?
Yeah. So like,
right, okay.
put like a Marvel.
You were Ultron.
No. Yeah. So take that What If episode. You've become the Vision, and you can see all of reality.
Destroy it.
Yeah. Just destroy everything. That's the video game's objective. Kind of like Candy Crush. You just see the worlds and you just point the thing.
When I rewatch that episode now, I'm just going to imagine him. He's seeing it as Candy Crush. Like, Yes, all these worlds.
Marvel brings in like esteemed, like prestigious video game studio to make a Candy Crush. Like.
Ultron Candy Crush.
But
Planet Crush.
Yeah, no, I would imagine it would be something like kind of like what if episode. If it's like, Black Widow was there, like the only person. If you put like a character in there, which is like they're, on some Ultron world, or they're in some reality in which it's just them. Because again, you don't want to have this whole like, oh, it's all the Avengers and all this kind of stuff. So have kind of like Daredevil or something, some kind of like lesser known character, some someone who's a bit more interesting, which doesn't just shoot lightning or something like that, something you need to use your powers and your wits.
And yeah, Tom, anything you want to
add? Make game now, please. Yeah, no, that's. I mean, like, I'm just like really happy. Like, as Dave said, like Marvel have been needing to kind of like they have released games before, but they've never really grabbed the gamer's attention in the way like the Arkham games did. Obviously, Spider-Man was a huge success. Guardians of the Galaxy is looking like it's going to be a big success as well. The fact that they've announced this news just after like all the glowing reviews of Guardians is coming out is just like reaffirming that Marvel are properly in the video game world now. And I, for one, couldn't be happier. Now, if Insomniac could just give some news on the Wolverine game, I'm very eager for that. So, yes.
That one, I'm excited for that one. I will give you that. I'm excited for that Wolverine game. Right, that's it. That's our 3 stories. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with the main topic.
You were all once captains under Jabba the Hutt.
I'm here to make a proposal that's mutually beneficial. Why speak of conflict when cooperation can make us all rich?
What prevents us all from killing you and taking what we want?
If you had spoken such insolence to Jabba, he'd have fed you to his menagerie.
Please. Speak freely.
Boba Fett. Surprise! Disney and Lucasfilm have dropped the first trailer for the Book of Boba Fett, the new live-action Star Wars TV show that's coming to Disney Plus December 29th, which continues the adventures of everyone's favorite bounty hunter, now turned new crime boss. So this is directed by Robert Rodriguez, as well as Jon Favreau, Bryce Dallas Howard, and Dave Filoni, all returning from The Mandalorian Season 2. And it also has cinematographer Dean Cundey, who did Jurassic Park and The Thing. So, Tom, I'm going to go to you on this one first, because me and Dave, we've spoken ad nauseum about Star Wars, so I know very well where he lies in this sort of this project. But what about you? What did you think of the trailer? And are you a Boba guy? Is that faction of Star Wars interesting to you? The bounty hunters, underworlds, that sort of area of Star Wars?
Look, he's just a simple man just trying to make his way through the galaxy. So of course I love him. And as for this trailer, like, did it excite me? Gentlemen, I had to change my trousers afterwards. It was fucking biblical up there. It was amazing. Like, as soon as I saw the trailer was out, I was like, I was in work and I was kind of like, can't watch this yet. It's all right. It's fine. I'll watch it later. And the whole time I was like, need to watch it now. Finally got to watching it and it just blew my socks off. I just love the look of it, the vibe. It feels kind of like Mandalorian, but also like its own thing. And I definitely think it is going to stand out as its own thing. Getting so much more Fennec. I love that because I love Ming-Na Wen. So I'm always happy to see her in anything. Tamura Morrison just looks fantastic as Boba still. Just that one shot where he's just like crushing that guy's head. It's like that look in his eyes. I was just like, I am terrified right now and I love it. So yeah, I'm a big Boba fan. I was very happy when he came back in Mando Season 2 because it was just so glorious. And this looks like it's going to be equally as glorious. And I'm very intrigued for like the sort of larger implications for the Star Wars universe going forward, like what it means now that Boba is the new crime boss of the underworld. So yeah, I think that's my current thoughts on it. I'll let you guys talk about it now because I need to change my trousers again after thinking about the trailer.
Yes, Dave, I'll go to you then. You know, we've on the Mandalorians, we've been discussing the Mandalorian and the Bad Batch. Boba Fett has popped up in numerous of our conversations in there, and naturally talking about this show. But now that we've got our first look of it, what do you think?
Yeah, you know, I'm definitely really excited for this show. I think I didn't even need a trailer to be excited. I think what we saw at the end of Mando Season 2, you know, was a great setup for that. The logo looked great. And what we had seen of Boba in that series kind of give us a big idea of what we get. Even the fact that, like, Boba changed his armor and everything within that he had his, like, nice new shiny armor. So it's not even like this show, which I don't think is, like, detriment to the show or anything. It just helps your excitement for it. But the fact that it's not like they can go like, oh, here's like his look for the new season or anything, and we can sort of like break that apart. And in some ways it's refreshing, because you're like, oh yeah, you can go in more confident knowing what you're going to get. You know, even like, again, with like Fennec, you know, it's not again like, oh, who's this lady? You know, like we know who Fennec is. We know who the Hutts are. We know, you know, a lot of these locations like Tatooine, etc. So it's nice in that way to have a Star Wars project which you can kind of go into feeling very confident. And to me, when I was watching this, I was like, this is what I always imagined Star Wars television to be. You know, I think The Mandalorian did definitely have a lot of elements of what I expected. But this is very much, you know, what people were first talking about when Lucasfilm was bought by Disney. You know, like, oh, we're going to get a Boba Fett film and a Yoda film, etc. And, you know, while some of that I was, you know, a bit cautious about, this seems like the better avenue to go down, especially in our days of streaming. And you know, I've often said with like Bad Batch and things like that, I think the Star Wars does very much suit television because you can, you know, tell her in that serialized episodic way. And I think that it is the most suited to those kind of movie characters that we want to see more about. Not sure how it'll quite work with Kenobi, but we'll see on that. That's a different issue. But I just hope it means then the films can sort of like stand alone and introduce their own characters and be their own thing. So I'm glad that this trailer was able to just kind of be like, yep, this is what you expected. Boba being a badass, kind of get, you know, like incorporating himself into this world, and it's just kind of like the nerdy stuff that you kind of enjoy, being like, oh, we're getting to see Jabba's bedroom, like, you know, we're getting to see like a room at the top of his palace and all that kind of stuff. It's just the fun things like that, and the things that make me so excited as a Star Wars fan, especially having a turbulent relationship with the franchise for the past few years. Like here again, you know, Jake knows I've ranted often about like one of the particular Mando episodes I didn't like from season 1, but here I was like, yes, we got like Twi'leks that look like Twi'leks, like, you know, that looked like, you know, what we had in Lucas's films. So it's just that level of detail that they get it, they understand it. It seems like the world of Boba in a way. And yeah, you know, personally, I've always, you know, really loved the character. I've had friends who've been like, oh, he's just some silent guy, you know, what's so cool about that? But that is Star Wars in a lot of ways, is these bucket heads, these silent characters, imagining their stories and what they could be up to. And while I was never like, oh, I want to know where Boba come from, what he was doing for Empire, I think that this is a good way of like filling in like who he is by just showing us like an element that we never thought about. You know, we always think about the before, but what about the after? Not so much like, oh, he's survived the Sarlacc pit and now he's after revenge, he wants to kill Han Solo or something stupid like that. You know, I like the idea that he's potentially there just being like, you know what, I'm really pissed off, I was put in this situation by that giant slug and I'm going to go take his throne. So yeah, I think that it gave me a lot of what I expected, what I was anticipating. Interesting that I think this seems to like obviously take a lot from, you know, because Robert Rodriguez is still involved. So there's a lot of similarities in the episode he directed, which sort of reintroduced Boba. But also I'm getting like a lot of like Rogue One visual reminders here as well. Maybe because of that big city, it kind of looks like Jeddah, etc. So that's quite interesting that they know that like that's a big fan favorite and they keep drawing from that. and to get such an emphasis on like Tatooine and these like desert planets, etc., which kind of like fits Boba's vibe. So yeah, and the fact that this meant to be like 9 episodes, it's very exciting. I just wonder, will this just be kind of like a self-contained, like cool Boba crime underworld story, or is this going to have ramifications to be like, oh, this is like hinting at what will happen in The Mandalorian season 3, or Mandalore as a whole, or different cultures in Star Wars, or characters, etc., etc. So that that'll be interesting to see. But either way, I'll be happy. I've always loved the character. It's awesome to see him here. My only negative, I would say, is just as a trailer. I don't think it was like, oh, that was an amazing trailer. I think my excitement, my enjoyment comes from the characters, the visuals, what we might get. As an actual trailer itself, if you're just reviewing a trailer on its like technical merits or its like anticipation and excitement, I don't think it was like an amazing actual trailer. It was just mainly them talking and showing what a badass he is. But again, Mando did those kind of trailers, and that was for the better because you had so many surprises as you watched it. So I'm more than happy to have less visuals because we have things like Mando, Ahsoka appearing, and it's not like we've already seen it and being like, oh, like I wasn't sure how it looked in the trailer and all that kind of stuff. So that's good as well.
Nice. Yeah, for myself, Dave, you know how much Boba is my guy. For me, watching this trailer, very much I get the same feelings of watching The Mandalorian, where it just fills me with tremendous joy because, not to be gatekeeping, but it's like my Star Wars, do you know what I mean? This feels like the stuff that when I was a kid, I had my action figures and I was coming up with these stories. And, I lived in Gibraltar, so I was by the beach a lot, and I used to pretend the sand was Tatooine, and we'd reenact like the sail barge scene, and I would always want to be Boba Fett and stuff like that. So this just seems like it's just made for me personally. And obviously it's not. It's very personal to Jon Favreau and Robert Rodriguez and, of course, Dave Filoni and everyone else involved. But these are my people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel as if they just get this character, what this character needs to be, but also try something different with this character. And this is why I said to Dave that this is exactly what I expected from this show. But in this trailer, it also pulled me back with some of the unexpected things, because I was going into it, off the hype of the post-credit scene of like, oh yeah, he's just killed Boy Fortuna, he's going to fucking kick ass and kill everyone, he's going to wreck shop, do you know what I mean? When actually he's like, you know what? I'm tired. Why are we fighting when let's have a chat? Do you know what I mean? Like, when cooperation can make us rich, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I didn't expect them to go this angle, but I actually prefer this angle. Thank God they're in charge and not me. So I'm so excited for this. The visuals, it does feel... Interesting that you said that it feels standalone from The Mandalorian, Tom, because I actually feel as if this is like now the Mandoverse. Like, it has a very distinct house style, you could say. And in a way, I would expect Mando Season 3 and Ahsoka and any other live-action series they do set in this world to have a similar aesthetic and house style, you could say. So I feel as if this is truly like a spin-off of The Mandalorian. It feels like it's part of that world. Like, down to the way the costumes are done, the volume as well, it just looks fantastic. That technology keeps getting better and better. So, yeah, I'm so for this series, and I love all the little elements about it. I can't wait to dive into who this character really is. I know there is a portion of Star Wars fans who are, you could say, tired of going back to old characters. I'm not one of those fans. I love going back to characters. I love going deeper into what their motivations are, what they think about themselves, and especially how we've now been reintroduced to Boba Fett in Mando Season 2, where, yes, Dave, you made a point that he was just the silent badass, who didn't say anything and he just did a couple of cool things. And unfortunately, he went out like a bit of a chump, But the way he's been reintroduced now is a completely different take on the character, but still honoring what he was before. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is why I'm so intrigued what they're doing now. Now, because we've had the prequels, we know that he was a clone. what does that mean for him? You know, we saw in Mando season 2 when Bo-Katan mentioned something about him being a clone. He didn't take too kind to that. He was a bit like, what did you say to me? So what does that mean for him being a clone in the galaxy that they're in now? And yeah, like you said, Dave, about his seeing Jabba's like bedroom. I'm also more excited to just see more of the palace, because, you know, like George Lucas and the team, they did a fantastic job in 83, but they did with what they could. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure if they had the opportunity, they would have gone to like the downstairs bath spa and all of that sort of stuff. But I just can't wait to explore more of Jabba's palace, and the opening of the trailer as well, with that little spider creature that you see in Jabba's palace, like behind 3PO and R2-D2 as they're walking in. It's little details like that's like, oh, we're just going to throw that in for the fans because we know they'll love that. But it's not a detriment as for like, oh, it's just fan service. So like, no, it's just a nice little detail to like tie it into that world.
Just when you're seeing him put the helmet on, and the fact you can see some like curtains in the background, you're like, oh, you know, there's like drapes in the Star Wars universe and stuff, and you're just like, are we just going to get a scene of like Boba getting ready for his day and stuff? You know, it's quite funny in that sense. And yeah, I think it's interesting what you said about like what this could mean, you know, how it's going to impact the overall Star Wars story, you know, and where he is at the end of this. I suppose my question is, what if he doesn't survive? He's no good to me dead.
No, you can't kill him off just after we've got him back, Dave.
No.
I mean, I do think like drawing on what Dave was saying earlier about whether this could be a sort of like standalone story, its own thing, or maybe sort of continue on. It's kind of making me think of like, I don't know if you guys like saw like when these like reports and rumors were going around, but apparently like the word on the vine is that like Mandalorian's definitely going to continue for like a few more seasons, but I think they said after like season 3 or season 4 it would like sort of shift focus and continue under a different name. So I think we could be starting to see a bit of that from the other Star Wars series. So even if I reckon this story is going to be very self-contained, but obviously the effects of whatever happens at the end is going to echo throughout the Star Wars universe. So you could easily have a season 2. You could have a spin-off of maybe some character that you like from like the Book of Boba Fett, or it could be more Boba Fett, but maybe the show's under a different name. But I am also thinking
the magazine of Boba Fett.
Yeah, or as Dave said, the world of Boba Fett.
The manuscript of the scroll of Boba Fett.
Yes, the receipts of Boba Fett. But I also think like, you know, the Mandalorians, they want to take back Mandalore. Sure would be handy if, you know, they had criminal underworlds that they could maybe go to for help.
Well, Mando and Boba are tight now.
They are quite tight, yeah. So,
well, at the same time, though, are they tight? Because it was very much like, you give me my armor and I will protect you, the child, you know, and it was... And he did what he set out to do because he's honorable. But maybe after that, he's like, you and me are done now. Like, we're even. I'm off. And
well, maybe that could be the thing, because maybe Mando thinks they're tight, but then when he goes to meet them, like, Boba is just like, we made a deal. I honored that deal. We're done. And then you can just do it. Could be a whole thing about it. Anyway, we are just speculating into the future.
But also, like...
But, you know...
I also find it hilarious how... If you ask anyone, even somebody who's not really a Star Wars fan, but you go, oh, Boba Fett, what's it? He's that bounty hunter guy. You know, he is the bounty hunter. And they open the trailer with, I am not a bounty hunter. Which I think is a really interesting aspect, because from the get-go, you like, oh, you know he's changed his ways from that line. Do you know what I mean? And I also love the Ithorian, that they've got the actual, like, him speaking basic through the translator. Like, love that. Fucking love that.
But it goes back to what I was saying before of like not just doing the like, oh, you know, it again, I know like Solo has its fans and stuff and there's elements I enjoy of it, but it is very much a kind of like, oh, you know, like see him meeting Chewie and all this kind of stuff. If they kept doing that, if it's kind of like, you know, how did Yoda become Yoda and all this kind of stuff, it just is just kind of too much of what you expect and just very generic, and you get that a lot with like comic book stuff, as we were just saying with Morbius. So the aspect that, like you said, that you go with of just being like, oh, you're that bounty hunter, it's like, no, I'm no longer a bounty hunter. It's like, it just flips it on his head, and that's the best way to do this kind of stuff, I think. And so, you know, that's why we should put Captain Solo into the cargo hold, and let Boba run free. So yeah, and yeah, it's just, it looks fun. I think it's going to be a fun time in terms of Star Wars, and it'll be interesting because it is our first sole project after The Mandalorian as well, in which this is
feels like forever.
Yeah, and I like his sort of ethos, that kind of like, Jabba ruled with fear, I rule with respect, like that. Again, you're like, oh, what a refreshing aspect of Star Wars, like it almost seems like he's talking to the fandom. For years between the prequels, fans ruled with fear of like, you can't like the prequels and all this kind of stuff, and now like here's Boba come along and being like, I work with respect, if you like those films, I respect you.
Yeah, but to play on that line, what he says at the end as well, when Ming-Na Wen, like if you said that to Jabba, he'd feed you to his menagerie or whatever.
Menagerie.
Menagerie, one of his other creatures apart from the Rancor, apparently. Well, he did have that big tentacly thing that tried to wrap around 3PO, so maybe that was it. But, Boba was like, what did he say? Speak freely, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm getting the vibe that he's like, let's not fight. Let's all cooperate. Let's have a chat. Let's do, like, I'm changing my ways. And he's like, speak freely. But I still get the vibe, like, there's an extra beat in that scene of like, but beware. It's like, there's consequences for what you say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
I was totally getting that vibe as well.
So I'm like, and he's like, look, I don't want to fight, but if I have to, I will fuck you up. Do you know what I mean? And we clearly see in that, when you mentioned, Tom, where you see him, his eyes are bulging out. It looks like he's doing like the hacker again, like when we saw in Mando, and he's going to kick your ass. You don't fuck with Boba.
He might be like Star Wars' version of Daenerys. She's just like, I respect you. I want the people to be free. But then the next minute she might be, putting some people up on some stakes, and
she did crucify a lot of people.
Exactly.
I don't know if Boba's going to start crucifying people. I don't know.
He might start to ride a crate dragon. You never know.
Oh, don't tease me, David. I have to change my trousers again.
That's just his objective. He's just like, I want a crate dragon.
No, Dave, because as we saw in all its glorious form, the slave one is still there.
Yes.
Oh, or should I say Boba Fett starship?
That's only when you're like selling to under 12s.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So, anything else we want to say about Book of Boba before we head into our pull list? Tom, Dave?
Just let's move on as you wish.
This deal's getting worse all the time.
Mm-hmm.
December can't come quick enough for me at this point.
I know. It's not confirmed it has 9 episodes, but it is reported, so we'll see. That'll be a nice, juicy 9 episodes, though.
Oh, great way to start like 2022 as well, with a bunch of Boba Fett episodes.
Also, I just want to add that I think, we focus so much on Tamara Morrison. I loved as well, like, seeing Ming-Na Wen's, like, enthusiasm on Twitter and stuff. It's so infectious, and it's, like, fantastic to see when she's putting, like, about, like, pictures of hers, like, in her childhood, like, as a Star Wars fan and stuff like that, saying, like, as corny as it might be, but, like, dreams come true kind of thing, like, oh, look where I am now, and it's just great to see, because you get so many times in which an actor's just like, oh, yeah, I'm part of this dumb sci-fi show thing. Whereas, it's great now that we're starting to get actors and performers who are fans of this material themselves. And a lot of people are saying the same with Tamara Morrison, of being like, this guy has been so good to the community and he's been such a great sport, for years, that, he deserves this. So I think that, these two together as well is, it's very interesting.
Right. So that's the Book of Boba Fett trailer. That's going to be premiering on Disney Plus December 29th. So look out for that. So we're going to go into now our weekly pull list.
Well, after X-Men hit at the box office, all the studios started buying up every comic property they could get their dirty little hands on.
Woo! It's back, yo. The weekly pull list, and it's a weird one this week. It's a slow week for Marvel, I gotta say. They are releasing a couple of things, but there was only one thing that really grabbed my attention, and it is because it's linked into a larger event, which is the death of Doctor Strange. and this is the Avengers tie-in, the first issue of that. I would go a bit deep into it, but like the solicits for Marvel recently have actually already spoiled a lot of the plot, so I'm going to try and give you as little info as possible. But as you can tell by the name of the series, Doctor Strange is dead. There needs to be a new Sorcerer Supreme. What's going to happen? How are the Avengers tied into this? The entire world is at stake, people. So tune in and find out who will become the next Sorcerer Supreme. And then hopping over to DC, it's a good week for them. They've got Human Target issue 1 by Tom King coming out, with art by Greg Smallwood. The art just looks so fantastic. And the Human Target was, when they initially were teasing this, I thought they were doing like some Justice League International reboot, and then he just throws us through the loop by going, no, it's Human Target. Now, very interesting character. I mean, he's basically what he says. He's a human target. He's meant to be like the sort of decoy. And this is basically a murder mystery. It's Tom King doing a murder mystery, so that's got to be good. As I said, you've got the old Justice League International there. You've got a really obscure character that Tom King can just go nuts with. And as I said, the art is just stellar. So Human Target issue 1, be sure to pick that up. Another issue 1 and another highly anticipated one is Tom Taylor's Dark Knights of Steel. So it's Tom Taylor doing an Elseworld story, so you know it's going to be good. And in this one, it's basically, imagine DC Game of Thrones. And they're all like suited and booted like knights, and they look fucking glorious. Like, again, the art just looks amazing. It is metal as fuck. I mean, Batman especially just looks fucking great. It's just looking like a very interesting series.
Those variant covers as well, man. They look dope as fuck.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to have to try and track down one of the variant cover ones, just because... it's just it's going to be a very good series. As I said, it's Tom Taylor doing an alternate universe story. It's like medieval. I don't think I need to sell this anymore. It sells itself. So everyone pick up Dark Knights of Steel issue 1. And then over at Milestone Comics, I'm bringing in Milestone because I was quite chuffed with their panel at DC Fandom. So I am trying to give Milestone a bit more time in my weekly polls. So I'm going to suggest Static Season 1. Issue 4 is out this week, but I'm going to suggest you just go ahead and pick up the whole thing because, Static Shock's amazing. It's just looking like a very interesting series. Milestone are doing some amazing stuff at the moment. Great characters, great artwork, great writers. And if you're a fan of the character Static Shock, then you definitely want to be picking this up. So again, that's Static Season 1, Issue 4. And then over at Image Comics, I know we're a bit past Halloween now, but because we didn't have a Halloween news show, I'm just going to throw in a horror anthology series from Image Comics known as The Silver Coin. It's got a collection of various writers on there. You've got Ram V on there, Joshua Williamson, some very dark stories in there. And I'm not usually into horror, but The Silver Coin has been grabbing my attention. So I definitely recommend picking that up. So taking it from the top, over at Marvel, we've got Death of Doctor Strange, Avengers issue 1. At DC, we've got Dark Knights of Steel issue 1 and Human Target issue 1. Over at Milestone, we've got Static Season 1 issue 4, though I urge you to pick up the whole thing so far. And at Image Comics, we've got The Silver Coin issue 6. So, guys, what do you think? Anything grab your fancy? Anything you want to throw in?
Well, definitely getting Dark Knights of Steel and Human Target. Two of my favorite Toms, apart from you, Tom, is Tom Taylor and Tom King, two of my favorite writers in comics at the minute. Both of them I just think are fantastic. And it just feels perfect for them. Like Tom King doing a mystery story, I'm like, well, that fits. And then Tom Taylor doing an alternative universe take on the DC universe. Well, that fits because he just did that with Deceased, and that was amazing. You know what I mean? His zombie verse. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be picking those up. And DC with knights and swords and shields and shit. Come on, man, that's metal as fuck. I'm so down for that. I haven't read any of the Static season, but hearing you talk about it and praise about it, I might might get it when it's collected, because I am interested in seeing what they're doing with Static Shock at the minute, because with the announcement of the movie and that's moving forward and stuff like that, yeah, it would be good to get more into Static Shock. So yeah, that's from me.
Well, just Milestone Comics in general.
Yeah,
They're
Icon
pumping out a lot of good stuff.
What's the other one? Hardware. There we go.
That's it. Yeah.
Hardware. Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of echo that. I was impressed by their panel at Fandom as well. And like I said, it's just a great chance to sort of see those characters and stories that are sort of lesser known or have gone under the radar. So it's a great chance to celebrate those, because, you know, we often just have like a lot of the same characters will pop up. That being said, you know, it's interesting how Doctor Strange has taken such a big role within like comics and movies and shows within the past few years, and I think we'll continue to see that now. Obviously, that they're like, oh, you know, Multiverse Madness and Far From Home is coming up, so I think we're going to get a lot of Doctor Strange, and they're very much using him as a vehicle to cause chaos and bring about crazy mind-bending power stuff, which they can kind of excuse away with like, oh, it's magic. So yeah, I think it's interesting that he keeps coming to the center of like the storylines and stuff. But as Marvel has done quite recently with a lot of their characters, they're sort of changing them up, changing Thor, etc., changing Spider-Man. So it'd be interesting to see the switch that happens there.
Awesome. Do we have a classic pull this week, Tom?
I've been trying to think about a classic pull. So I think, seeing as we've got, you know, Tom Taylor doing an Elseworld story, I thought, why don't I recommend an Elseworld story? And I'm going to recommend Superman Red Sun, because holy fuck, is that good? It's just so good. I mean, like, you know, it's a pretty standard premise. What if Superman landed in Soviet Russia and became the Soviet Superman? And it's just amazing. So yeah, Superman Red Sun, definitely check that out.
And there's Russian Batman in there as well.
Russian Batman, yes,
because Batman owes us.
Yeah,
but
who likes bombs?
Yes.
I also have to say as well, I agree with Tom. Well, I would say with the Halloween thing as well, it's never too late for Halloween and spooky stuff. Like it's such a shame that it's like over and then it's Christmas.
The Nightmare Before Christmas is a perfect example for that.
Yes, yeah. Bridge the two worlds.
Bridge the two worlds. Right. Right. Thank you all for
make
listening.
Halloween a bank holiday.
Oh, they should. They should.
Yeah.
So that's the end of the show then. So we thank you all for listening to this episode. Appreciate people coming on board every week, listening to us discuss and geek out. But if you want to continue the conversation with us, Dave, where can they do that, and what have you got up your sleeve?
So you can catch me over on Twitter and on Letterboxd at David Osgar, Osgar. You can see my thoughts and opinions on random stuff that's happening. You can join my new initiative to stop Chris Pratt at any means possible. He is out of control.
He must be stopped.
Yeah, I think that...
I know he's Garfield now, for fuck's
he's obviously reacted quite badly to people blaming the Thanos thing on him, so he's just decided to throw caution to the wind and make us all suffer. So yeah, join in that. You'll also get to see, you know, the spooky stuff, you know, like still holding on to Halloween with my costume as a mad scientist. And also...
Oh, that was a costume.
What? What else would it have been? Just my daily wear.
I thought it was just your daily wear.
You can also... I don't
know what you get up to, Dave.
You can also email me if you want any video game ideas. I currently am in talks to develop Candy Crush Vision, World Destroying fun game for your mobile. Hit me up if you're interested.
Yeah, any app developers out there, get in touch. We can make this work. Tom, how about yourself?
Well, you can mostly find me on Twitter with my lovely handle at Comic Book Shogun, where I'm still on my Wire binge, so a lot of what I'm posting is about the Wire, but I'm probably going to also start spamming it with Dune stuff because now I'm in Dune mode. But I will try and make time for more comics orientated things on there. And also, see if Dave is pushing stuff, then I'm going to push stuff. People can email me as well about my video game ideas, or hell, if you know an artist who would like to help draw a comic, please let me know.
Tom is taking over Arrakis now. Here's Arrakis.
Yes.
My dude.
Yes.
He's gonna
Desert takes the week. Yes, and you can also find me on Twitter joining Tom, just talking about Dune and keeping the Dune train running. But also coming up, going to be talking about Eternals. That's going to be dropping. So catch me on Twitter at SweatyJake. And I'm also on Letterboxd at Jake Hart. And as for the show, you can find and follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Cowls Masks. And whether you use Anchor, Spotify, Apple, or Google, subscribe to us on there. And if you're on Apple, leave us a rating and a review, as it all helps us go up in the rankings. So, thank you all for listening. We'll see you all next week for our Eternals spoiler review. Stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.